bird. So, as I explained you yesterday, in this section of the historical context of the Constituent Assembly, I have briefed you about the Indian Council Act of 1861-92 and the Indian Council Act 1909 and the Government of India Act 1919. And even I briefed you about this Government of India Act 1935 and what was the vision of Mahatma Gandhi and what was the stand of the Indian National Congress over that and their main agenda in different sessions and the white paper of 1933. And I talked about the cabinet mission and their purpose, and apart from that there is key to compromise between the Union of India and its province. So that scheme I talked about. Uh, then I was talking about this chief proposal of the cabinet mission. Have I talked about this?
No, sir.
Okay. So today we'll talk about the under the demand for the Constituent Assembly, the first part, the historical demand. Uh, so the chief proposal of the cabinet mission. So there should be a union of India embracing British India and the state. So union of India. At this point of the time, the British government not agreed for the partition, and it will be the dominant status under the British. So that's why British India. So the second chief proposal, the union should have an executive and legislature of representatives chosen from the British India and the state. So there will be the union with an executive and the legislature, and they will represent the elected representatives from the British India and the states. Third thing, all subjects other than the union subject would be vested in the state. So whatever will be mentioned in the union subject, as I told you yesterday, that will be foreign affairs, defense, and communication, and rest will be under the state. So the state will be more powerful in comparison to the union. Then the next proposal, province would be free to form groups with executives and legislatures, and each group would be capable to determine the provincial subject, which would be taken up by the group organizations. So, by this way, here the main point is that the provinces are free to form the association or the groups, having their own groups with the executive and the legislature, and they will determine which item will be in the provincial subject. And the sixth proposal of the cabinet mission was the formation of a constituent assembly. So these were the chief proposal of the cabinet mission. So then move on to the more details. The cabinet mission had envisaged united India in the line with the Congress and the Muslim League aspirations. So the cabinet mission agreed what the Congress leaders were saying at that point of the time. There will be the united India, and it tries to fulfill some of the aspirations of the Muslim League as the groupings of the state. As I told you yesterday, the Northwest Frontier Province, Baluchistan, Sindh, and there will be the another group, the Muslim-dominated Bengal, and then this ashram. But difference of opinion had arisen in the mind of the Congress and the Muslim League leaders regarding the interpretation of the grouping clause of the proposal of the cabinet meeting. So, in this cabinet meeting, when they talked about the groupings of the state, so it's all because of this grouping of the state having it leads to the creation of the difference of opinion. Congress people started thinking something else and Muslim League something else. So the Congress leaders claimed and stated they are trying to give the communal color to the grouping satchel on the line of the religion. They are doing the grouping of the states. So that's why they objected, and the Muslim League, having the different opinion, will be under that and wants the more autonomy, even the foreign and the others as well. And then comes the interpreting of the grouping clause, which I explained you already, of the cabinet mission, the differences over this. And the one of the major thing behind the differences, grouping of Muslim majority provinces and that of Hindu majority provinces with the integration of balancing each other at the center legislature. When you look at this, so why they have done the grouping, and they and by this way they can balance each other at the central legislature. There will be the one group of the state, that is the Muslim majority province, and the another group you will find the Hindu majority provinces, and they will balance each other with the intention. The main intention was behind that, the balancing each other at the central legislature. So, do you have any doubt till now?
Sir, you said something like interpreting. What was that?
Sir, and
Interpreting, yes, is someone else is just speaking.
yes sir, आप पहले इसका डाउट क्लियर कर दो फिर मैं पूछूंगा.
Okay, okay. I said interpreting when the proposal has come under this cabinet mission. So, and when they started talking about that, the groupings of the estate. So, when the interpretation of this grouping clause, so when the leaders started interpreting it in details, which kind of the grouping, on what will be the criteria will be that which I told you yesterday. There will be the one group, the Muslim dominated population, that will be the Sindh, Baluchistan, northwest frontier province, and uh, the another Baluchistan, and this another province, the another group, in another groups, the Muslim dominated Bengal and the Assam. So the groupings on the line. So when you are going to explain the things, that is interpretation. You are trying to interpret it, its meaning.
Got it,
Is
sir.
it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Who is next? Priyans.
सर हो गया सर, ग्रुपिंग के बारे में पूछना था, हो गया सर.
Okay. So we'll move on to next. On December 6, 1946, the British government published the following statement, which I will tell you the same word which the British government published on the 6th December 1946. Should a constitution come to be framed by the Constituent Assembly, in which a large section of the Indian population had not represented His Majesty government, would not contemplate forcing such a constitution upon any unwilling part of the country. So, will you be able to understand this statement? I'm asking, is it clear to you this statement?
No, sir, please explain.
Okay, so listen it carefully. If you wish, you can note it down. Should a constitution come to be framed by the Constituent Assembly, in which a large section of the Indian population had not represented? So, when I will tell you the composition of the Constituent Assembly, they were not elected. They were nominated from the different sections of the society. They were not elected by the people. So their claim was that it's a kind of the critique. And then the British government stated in the statement, His Majesty government, it refers to the government of India, would not contemplate forcing such a constitution upon any unwilling part of the country. And at that point of the time, all the parts, as you see, the today was not the part of the India. Even they told the princely estates to send their representatives to represent them in the Constituent Assembly. They reserved the seats for them and they invited them. Some of them have joined the process and became the member of the Constituent Assembly, and while others not. And if you have watched the videos, you must have seen in that. We'll move on to the next. The British government, for the first time, recognized the claims for the two constituent assemblies and the two states. So, before this, you need to understand after this cabinet mission, so as I explained you this cabinet mission about that, and this whomsoever have joined now must rename yourself according to your name, otherwise we'll send you out. So if we'll talk about the making of the constitution, what's going on this, we're not allowed to join. So as you have seen in the making of the constitution in the 1940, the coalition government of the Britain agreed that India must have a constitution framed by the Indian themselves. And followed the World War II, the British rulers announced their Indian policy and decided to convene a constitution drafting body, and again made by Indian themselves. Already, I who is Bada Sivaj? Change your name, otherwise will not you allow you to the join. Uh, and as I told you, the three British cabinet ministers were the same: the Lord Patrick Lawrence, Sir Stafford Cripps, and A.V. Alexander, and all those things. And they were also the cabinet minister sent to the India to take the initiative for the formation of the Constituent Assembly, and as well as to put the guideline for framing the Constitution of India. So actually, British rulers were not ready to leave India in their own position. So they still try to have some sort of control over independent India through making of this constitution. And this mission was called the Cabinet Mission, which was sent to India at the initiative of the then British Prime Minister Clement Attlee. And this cabinet mission remained in India from March 1946 to May 1946. And already I have briefed you about their features, but I'm just trying to sum up all those things at a one scale. And the objective of this mission, the British Cabinet mission aimed to discuss and plan for the transfer of power from the British rulers to the Indian leaders. They were going to discuss how the power will be transferred from the British rulers to the Indian leaders. And that was the beginning for the step towards the independence of India. This proposal came as recommendation and were subject to approval of the two major parties, the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. And for that, they called the Simla Conference. The viceroy of at that point of the time began to organize this process of transfer of the power from the British rulers to India. So on 24 August 1946, formation of an interim government was announced. Member of the interim government were actually the member of the Viceroy Council. Whomsoever was the member of the Viceroy Council will become the had become the member of the interim government at that point of the time. So the next question comes: who was this Viceroy? So maybe this question was coming in your mind. So this Viceroy was actually a part or a deputy or a representative of the British government in India. So this interim government was formed under the auspices of the British rulers. And again, a colonial legacy was left. How? The Viceroy continued to be the head of the council, and Pandit Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru was designated as the vice president of the council, or in a better way to say, the de facto prime minister of India, till the moment the constitution will be formed. Meanwhile, the Constituent Assembly, from which the interim government was drawn, had to struggle a lot to draft a constitution for independent India. So I'm talking about a struggle, had to struggle. So you have to understand what was that struggle? What does it mean, the struggle? Actually, the struggle was regarding the distribution or balancing of power between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. This was the struggle. How the power will be distributed between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, and how the power will be balanced between Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. The Muslim League, especially its leader Muhammad Ali Jinnah, condemned the interim government. Jinnah rejected and criticized the government. And why he condemned the interim government? Why Jinnah condemned? Jinnah condemned because he wanted to have a separate constituent assembly for absolutely a separate state, that is Pakistan. He did not want a one constituent assembly. He wanted to have a separate constituent assembly for absolute, a separate state, that is Pakistan. Uh, Lord Wavell, the then viceroy, failed to reconcile the point of dispute between the Congress leader and the League leaders. League refers to the Muslim League, and could not convene any meeting till 9th December 1946. So this was the scenario at that point of the time. In the meantime, till the 9th December 1946, in between, there was an outbreak of communal rights in India, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah announced for Direct Action Day. So now we'll talk about the Direct Action Day. Direct Action Day lead to communal disturbances all along Bengal and other Muslim dominated parts of undivided India. Jawaharlal Nehru tried his best to console and waited for Jinnah to take a revised decision, and ultimately he failed. Though Jawaharlal Nehru was not supported by Patel and other leaders in this issue, still he attempted to pacify Jinnah's claim. So you can see now the differences in the Congress camp as well over a certain issue. So after this failure, when Lord Mountbatten replaced Lord Wavell, so when the British government found that nothing is going on, not moving ahead on this direction, so he replaced Lord Wavell, who was the viceroy of at that point of the time, and sent Lord Mountbatten to India as a viceroy. And then the Congress leader, they communicated the entire thing to Lord Mountbatten. And Lord Mountbatten tried to expedite the process of the transfer of the power from the British government to India. And he hailed the purpose of the cabinet mission. And why he expedited and why they were in a hurry. The reason behind that, the liability. They were not getting the enough money from the India, and to maintain the administration in India, they need to send the money from the Britain, and their economic situation has deteriorated. So they do not want to afford, they were not in a position to afford India as a colony because of the number of the protests and the pressure from the United States and the United States of America, USA in the United Nations for the process of the decolonization. So if I will say in a nutshell, the chief proposal of the cabinet mission where there would be a union of India embracing British India and the state. The union should have an executive and legislature for representatives chosen from the British India and the states. Already I explained you this. And all subjects other than the union subjects would be vested in the state. So in this manner, the state having more power. So far as the third point is concerned, which I told you, the subject other than the all subjects other than the union subjects would be vested in the state. It was Jinnah's initiative so that the states be given more powers. Otherwise, Congress always demanded a centralized government so as to coordinate things between that state and the center, or to hold a very strong control over the peripheries of India. So the Congress was in the favor of the centralized government, where the center will be more powerful in comparison to the provinces. But the Jinnah thought was something else, and it was incorporated in the cabinet mission. So it was Jinnah who demanded for more state power, though he did not agree to the cabinet mission proposal later on and ultimately wanted a separate constituent assembly. So these proposals were not carried forward because of the disagreement between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. So the first interim government, which was announced on the 24th August 1946, which was actually Viceroy Executive Council, and also failed to function properly. However, the first interim government was actually the reflection of the future state of governance in independent India. So, when the first interim government was formed in 1947, it was going to reflect the future state of governance in independent India, how the state will govern in India, and which kind of the governance will be there. So now the next thing comes: who were the members of the interim government? The members were, apart from Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, there were other members like the Sikh leader Baldeep Singh. He dealt with the Department of Defense. Chakravarti Raja Gopalachari, Department of Education and Arts. Muhammad, Asif Ali Muslim, Congress leader, Department of Railway and Transport. Scheduled caste leader, Jagjeevan Ram, Department of Labor. Then comes Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Department of Food and Agriculture. Then comes John Mathai, Department of Industries and Supply. These were the key members of the Constituent Assembly. So, as the Muslim League ultimately joined the interim government on 13th of October, they added Abdur Rab Nistar, Department of Post and Air, Ibrahim Ismail uh, Chandrigar, Department of Commerce. Muslim League representation in the interim government, headed by Liaquat Ali Khan, who used to deal with the Department of Finance. He was representing the Muslim League in the interim government, and he was dealing with the Department of Finance. So this interim government was again reconstituted on 26th of October 1946. And why? Once it was formed in the month of August, then the Muslim League denied to join it. And again, when the Muslim League agreed to join, then it was reconstituted on 26th October 1946. And the Muslim League also nominated a scheduled caste Hindu politician, Jogendranath Mondal, to lead the Department of Law. But this coalition did not last long. Ultimately, This did not serve the interest of either the Muslim League or the Indian National Congress. So Jinnah and the Muslim League, they did not want to go for the coalition, and the process of interim government failed to serve its purpose. Muslim League asked for the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly on the ground it failed to represent all sections of the people of India. So after that comes the partition of India. Before moving to that, uh, we'll ask from you people, do you have any confusion till now?
No, sir.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the next section, uh, that is the partition of India. So, actually, if we look at the composition of the Constituent Assembly, it was 82% Congress leader who joined, which to say either elected by the Congress or nominated by the Congress who joined Constituent Assembly. They were 82%. So naturally, Muslim League was scared as to their security as regards to the distribution of power in the center and in the periphery. Periphery refers to the province where having the groupings of the state. So Muslim League urged for I was talking about what
Sir,
Security.
the
partition. Yeah. So as I told you, it's all because of the dominance of the Congress leader having this certain kind of the fear and the security concern related to the distribution of power in the center and in the periphery. So the Muslim League urged for the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly, and by the second session of the Assembly, held in late January 1947, it became clear that Muslim League would quit the Assembly. So on 20th February 1947, Her Majesty's government in Britain gave a very clear statement. It was very strategic statement given by Her Majesty's government of Britain. And that statement was what? It would transfer authority by June 1948. So the British government on 20th February 1947 said what? Will transfer the authority by June 1948. They are saying when? In the month of February 1947. But they transferred the authority in 1947 only. They were in so hurry. But if by that time a fully on 20th January 1947, they stated it would transfer authority by June 1948. But if by that time a fully representative constituent assembly could not be formed, then Her Majesty's government will have to consider to whom the power of the central government in British India should be handed over on the due date. If the Constituent Assembly failed to do so, then they have to think whom the power of the central government will be transferred in India. But anyhow, they are going to transfer. That is, if there is none who would accept the charge, then the British will stay. That was their reason behind that. But Muslim League did not consider it enough to join the assembly and continued pressing for a separate constituent assembly for Pakistan, despite of all these things. So partition was in the air by April. All these things happened in the month of February, on 20th February 1946. So the partition, 1940, 20th February 1947. So the partition was in the air by April, and assembly was restricted to draft a constitution. So what it could do? It could only declare an objective resolution of the Constituent Assembly. And Lord Mountbatten, when he came to India and replaced Lord Webble, he made avenues to expedite the process of this transfer of power. He started working and expedited the process, the transfer of the power, as soon as they can do. By this time, as I have already said, that coalition was unworkable because Muslim League was not cooperating and joining, would inevitably break down. India witnessed bloodshed, violence, and mass killing. And this led to eventual proposal and acceptance of the partition of India because of this. So the India was partitioned. Two new nations came into being. One India and other Pakistan, with their own sets of constitution. Sorry, with their own sets of constituent assembly. And the task of the Constituent Assembly is to form the constitution for their own land. The movement not only culminated in the formation of a Dominion of India on 15th August 1947, but also compelled the Governor General to announce on 26th July 1947 that a separate Constituent Assembly would be formed for Pakistan as well as for India. So the partition was clear, and it was decided there will be the two separate Constituent Assembly. So I will conclude the lecture here, the demand for the Constituent Assembly. So we'll conclude here. As soon as Muslim League left the assembly, the indigenous assembly that was existing at that point of the time, and started for the formation of a new constituent assembly. The process has just started for the formation of the new constituent assembly. The process was stalled. And framing the constitution suffered a jolt because Constituent Assembly for India was to be reconstructed. And as I have already mentioned, that there was paucity of time as well as of money. India was in hurry because to get rid of the British colonial operation and the British colonial domination, India needed a constitution. To get rid of the British colony, to get the complete independence, because India got the dominant status in 1947. To get the complete independence, India needed a constitution. But this factor, that is the cleavage, which means the differences or the confrontation between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, perhaps made the British or allowed the British to stay longer in India. And they actually perhaps laughed at our drawback that we the Indians could not get united as regards the vital question of getting independence. Thus, two separate independent dominants were set up with their own set of Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly, after the reconstitution, reassembled on the 14th day of August 1947 to finalize a constitution for sovereign India. The Constituent Assembly of India, of course, worked harder to design a constitution for India, and the constitution was finally adopted on 26th day of November 1949. This day of in this sorry in this long journey, of course, hurdles were there, but at least India owned freedom at the midnight of August 1947, following which we got our constitution. In this constitution, we can also ask a question, that is, to what extent it is a sovereign entity. This question comes. The provision of the Government of India Act 1935, though never implemented fully, but had a very deep impact on the Constitution of India. How? We'll talk about in upcoming lectures. And already I briefed you. Many key features of the Constitution were directly taken from this act, like the federal structure of the government, taken away from the Government of India Act 1935, provincial autonomy, bicameral legislature consisting of a federal assembly and a council of a state, that is the Rajya Sabha, separation of legislative power or distribution of power between the center and the state. So we'll talk about in the upcoming units the center-state relation, and so many such other provisions were directly taken from this 1935 Government of India Act, which was actually the creation of the British government. Still now, the after several amendments, we are having our own constitution with our own values, with our own set of necessities. And let's see, so far as we the citizen of India are concerned, can make it absolutely an indigenous one. So far we have discussed, therefore, that India won freedom, and in the process of winning this freedom, there were a lot of hurdles, after a lot of challenges, after a lot of confrontations. A separate constituent assembly for India was framed with its own indigenous problem, native problem, with its several limitations. Still, they worked hard, and ultimately we got our constitution. So here, the first part of the Constituent Assembly, that is the demand for Constituent Assembly, got over, and we'll talk about the functions and the compositions of the Constituent Assembly